Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Red Velvet. This is episode 2. This week we will be talking about toxicity and how that impacts relationships. I'm your host, Sunny, with my co-host,
Alan.
And we're here to just bring you content that is enjoyable, positive, and focuses on human relationships and wellness. So, Alan,
Yes.
Before we begin, how was your weekend? I mean, this is another week, and did you do anything fun, interesting?
I went. Let me see. Where did I go this weekend? I went ahead and took my kids to the lake. We had some swimming time, which was always good. And I let a friend of mine borrow my car. Which went really well. And then I got a chance to cut some sand from the Oregon coast, so that was kind of exciting.
Oh wait, what were you doing with the Oregon coast?
Well, a friend of mine went to the Oregon coast, but he brought back some sand, like a little bag of sand, and the sand was so soft, it was like sugar. It felt so soft in my hands because it's like untapped sand. So that went really well, and I've been dog sitting, so it just and dog sitting is almost over, but it's just like taking care of some kids.
Oh, and sure, absolutely.
Oh my God, there are some toxic dogs out there because there's some dogs that just love to just stir the pot, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I actually went away for a short jaunt to Massanutten Resort in Virginia.
You went away? Where did you go? Wow, that sounds like fun.
It was fantastic. And I was able to enjoy outdoorsy activities. It's, nestled in the Shenandoah Valley. So got some canoe time in, got some horseback riding in, used the amenities on the resort site. It was fantastic. It was a much needed R&R. And yeah, it was short but sweet, and I feel refreshed to tackle another week here in humid Maryland. We've been bombarded with storms pretty much every single day, like just thunderstorms. There was actually like an aerial floodplain warning for like the majority of Maryland counties But it's been crazy. So I haven't had my time to go to the pool much, just been indoors, just hunkering down and
when the weather hits, it definitely tends us all for a little spur. It just changes everything because you never know when you can plan for something and then the weather hits, and next thing you know, you got to adjust your plans.
It is. It's exhausting pivoting. I will tell you, since it's been raining like tremendously, like downpours, I've gotten a lot of sleep in. So in terms of kind of relaxation, catching up on Z's, I've been able to just sleep my days when it's been storming. It just makes me feel nice and cozy when I'm inside.
Right.
And
I got a chance to catch up on a lot of sleep this weekend too, but I think this week I'm gonna change it up and do a lot more of the opposite, kind of keep myself awake so I can kind of get back to normal.
That's awesome. Sounds like a plan. So I guess for our listeners today, we really want to focus on toxicity and what that means and how that applies to our lives in terms of when is enough, right?
When is enough?
When is enough? A lot of people, I think, at my age and your age, I mean, we can tell our listeners we're definitely over the hill, beyond the age of 40. Yeah, we can tell them that. I just want to reveal my age in terms of exactly how old I am. Don't want data miners or trollers to like figure out like things.
Well, those are toxic folks.
Those are very toxic folks. Yes. In fact, I was having a conversation with a friend recently about, I think there's a difference between being nosy or being curious or inquisitive. When it starts crossing the barriers to becoming toxic, abusive, harassing, and that I am actually in my personal life have come to understand the very fine line between those things. Everybody, I think, has a natural inclination to be nosy. Social media allows us to, you can troll people on Twitter or Facebook, or, as long as, they're public to the masses, or Instagram or what have you. I think what's really challenging is when you become to obsess over the trolling and try to create your own kind of, I don't know,
Narrative.
narrative
That's
to
really what it is. People try to try to control and create their own narrative to certain things that might not be there. They need to
exactly.
stick to the facts. They
And
don't
you
really
got to
need to start
thank you.
inventing things.
Thank you. We have to stick to the facts. Basically, we know facts versus fiction. And a lot of us, I think, who have been in romantic relationships or have, familial type of relationships that are maybe broken or somewhat needs repairing. So, or within our children, there are, relationships where it can just automatically over time become toxic. So I think that's what, we want to focus on. And, I guess from your personal experience, how have you dealt with, people who might have become or may have become toxic? But when was it that you knew, it's time for me to cut them out of my life? Like, how do you gauge that?
Me personally, I have a tough time with this because I can tend to be such a yes man by heart, so I really like people pleasing. I've always been kind of like that. And when you work with young people, as we have in the past, you tend to end up being a little bit of a people pleaser at times. But however, there have been lots of times where I did have to end up cutting people out of my life because regardless of where their status is, whether it be family members or they be people that I've met. And how I gauge it is this person helping me grow? And what I've learned is over time, if even if it is very passive aggressive or even very subtle, if that person or people are not really helping you grow and develop into a different person, especially a better person than who you are, then it's time to let them go. There have been situations where I live now where I had to find a way to let go of folk that just weren't helping me grow.
Sure.
And even with that being said, you got to remember that even if they're closer friends to you, time will always heal a wound. So you got to try to let that person go, let that person or let those people go, and let time kind of heal yourself and let that time actually help, hopefully heal them. So you let them back in or move on for good. A clean break is always the best break.
I agree. And I think, as I've gotten older throughout the years, there have been people who've come into my life or, I think we have this notion that like our childhood friends or high school friends or college friends, maybe forever friends. But then you start to recognize that, what? We as human beings tend to evolve. Our worldview starts to evolve. Our life experiences evolve. The types of relationships that we engage in tend to evolve. So I
Exactly.
think
As
there's
a person,
natural.
as people, yes, absolutely. Sorry to cut you off, but something, but
Exactly.
yes, as
So
people, we are ever changing. So
exactly.
what works for Alan today might not have worked for him 20 years ago. So
Absolutely. So for
naturally,
me,
there are some boundaries that are created by the way we grow. So what I might have allowed to bother me back when I was 20 probably is not something I would allow to let me bother me now that I'm in my 40s. It's
exactly.
totally different.
And I think you said the operative word is setting appropriate boundaries. I think, humans naturally, like you said, you're a people pleaser and you're kind of a yes man. It's hard to set these appropriate boundaries so that we can actually live this healthy, holistic, positive life. And especially when you are a people pleaser and you tend to just bend to everybody's will, that's when you do start to see, wow, this type of interaction or this type of relationship is becoming toxic. And I guess, it does become a burden over time. It wears you down. I think, I've seen people who, and actually in the past, year since January 2022, I've seen 7 of my friends get divorced, which is absolutely unheard of. And they're within our age range, they're Gen Xers and all getting divorced because, relationships are hard. I think, especially marriages when it's naturally kind of, when you share those vows to, forever, it's kind of a forever thing. And no matter through thick and thin, you're supposed to stick with it. But, when is enough enough? I mean, that's where you have to, like, is it infidelity? Is that enough? Or is it when, the other spouse, you're just like emotionally falling apart? You're not as close anymore. Is that enough? Is it enough to say, there's grounds for divorce because it's no longer romantic anymore?
Right.
Maybe you have like a lifestyle where you have to take care of kids and there's no lack of intimacy and whatever
it depends. I think also though, I will say this, that a lot of folks, I want to say they overthink a lot of things. And if people in relationships, especially with healthy relationships, they tend to overthink a lot of different things. Like a marriage and a relationship and a spouse, whatever you want to call it, partner, long-term boyfriend or whatever, girlfriend. Honestly, you don't want to overthink what you're in. You're in a very, very simple situation where you're just trying to spend your time with someone close to you. Spend your time with someone who is like-minded like yourself and wants to spend that time with you. So you try not to overthink it all. A lot of people I think because of COVID, because of times you had to be around your spouse a lot more. You had to really see a different side of them, probably saw a different gauge of how they go about their daily business, how they go about their daily life. But honestly, that person is still the same person. You just got to make sure you try to remember that that person just went through a very big deal. And they went through a very big traumatic thing that honestly a lot of people went through. So you just got to be able to accept that and radically know that there's more to that person than what you've always seen. Because think about it. You had like a good amount of people, millions of people that were going to work every day. Then they were stopped going to work. They had to stay home.
Sure.
And then you had to see them work from home and do their job in a little small medium. That's not easy to do. That's like very difficult.
So I would have to say, the 7 sets of friends that I've had within my sphere who have gotten divorced was due to infidelity. They all divorced because they couldn't get past that. And rightfully so. They have children and they're at a point in their lives where the children are old enough to understand that, the parents have grown out of love. That's why infidelity happens. So literally, I would say 4 out of the 7 couples divorced because of that. The other 2 couples that I know of in my immediate, sphere, basically divorced because they just they fell out of love. It was amicable. It had nothing to do with infidelity. It was just that they just wanted to move on. And quite frankly, I think they just were looking for another adventure in their lives. It wasn't due to infidelity. I think there was issues of power within the relationship. There were issues in terms of finances where the male wasn't bringing home as much money as the female. There were issues of, just control. And I think that's kind of what broke the camel's back.
It could be deeper than that, though, too. It could be that their love languages were just morphing. A lot of times people's love languages will change over time. It'll be like physical love, acts of service. It could be lots of different things. But then over days and months and years of seeing a person change, those love languages completely different. They could be completely different. And it could turn a relationship into a toxic relationship without even knowing.
And so, for me, I've been divorced for 16 years. And I have not actually have had a desire to ever get remarried again. And I mean, I think you and I know, like, I barely even have time to date. I don't even get myself out there. Nor do I do any like social media. I don't know, like those apps that people get on, like Tinder and Bumblebee. And, I have many friends who actually have pursued those things, or like Match, or what's the other one? eHarmony, or like there's so many now. I'm sure it exists.
We could go down the line.
It's like not my vibe. It's just it's never been my vibe. I don't date in the workplace. It's just one of those things where I've already created a
Black
boundary for
Planet. Don't
myself.
forget about Black Planet. That's another one too.
Oh, okay. Well, you know more than I do. I'm not in the know because I don't search for these things, and I just and I think, you know, for the past 16 years, I built a life, you know, raising my son on my own terms, and I've gotten comfortable with that. So it's been fantastic being able to, you know, and raise my son on my own terms without having somebody else to kind of share in the responsibility. I called the shots all the time, and, you know, my son is almost on his way to graduating and attending college soon. So I'm kind of almost there, raising my son until he's, you know, a legal adult. But as you and I know, parenting never ends. I mean, to the moment you take your last breath on earth, you know, you're still going to be a parent to your children. So
Right.
going back
Especially
to
if you're a good parent.
if you're a good parent. And, you know, I think a lot of parents, and talk about divorce and toxic relationships, I think a lot of parents, and I think you and I probably have people that we know who tend to not get divorced because they have children. And they just don't want their children, like impressionable children, not like kids who are like in high school. I think at any juncture, us being, you know, in our field, you know, of education and mental health, you know, professions, it's we see the trauma that, you know, kind of perseverates because of, you know, divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everybody is traumatized, but I think, you know, in terms of, you know, kids are very resilient, but, you know, divorce happens statistically in 1 out of 2 couples. So 50% of couples in the United States of America, and this is a statistic you can
It's
find
more
on,
like up to 64% now, actually.
oh, that's absolutely
that stat is actually going up. I'm a numbers geek, so you'll know that I as of 2022, I think it said that 65% of marriages end in divorce. 65.
That's higher than I even had, and that statistic was coming from probably 10 years ago.
That's almost 2/3 of every
amazing.
Every marriage.
So again, and, you know, the funny thing that we bring this up is I was watching Hulu, and there was that documentary. Have you ever heard of Ashley Madison?
Oh my goodness. It's ironic you bring this up. I was just mentioning this to my significant the other day about this lovely
Ashley Madison?
Yes, that lovely docuseries that just came out. That's a huge deal. That's like the third one of them that they came out about affairs and dating outside your marriage, and that website that's geared towards having affairs. So
I watched about a couple episodes of it, and I was stunned that this came out in like 2002. So this is like when, and I guess there were about like 50 million users, or 30, 50, something to that effect. And then by 2011, 2012, it was millions of people using Ashley Madison. And then Elliot Spitzer, the governor or the mayor of, he wasn't the governor, he was the mayor of New York.
Yes, he was.
He was using Ashley Madison or something to that effect. They put him in there.
Yeah.
It's like, this stuff is absolutely insane.
It is.
So again, now, do we gripe about the CEO who you know, went on a marketing frenzy, you know, to market?
The question is really, I guess, is he a toxic person? That's really the question.
Correct. Is he a toxic person, or is he there to make a buck? Or is he trying to push the envelope? Because traditional marriage, I mean, you and I both know traditional marriage is not what we think is always between a man and a wife. That's biblical. It's, you know, it can be, you know, man with a man, woman with a woman. And now that we know with government and our Supreme Court, we have no idea if they're going to peel back all those walls of, you know, same-sex marriages, which I am a pro advocate of LGBTQ rights and human rights. And I think everybody, you know, should be able to love who they want to love and have the same benefits as a heterosexual couple. So I'm just putting that out into the atmosphere. I am definitely pro equality, pro LGBTQ and trans and everything else, so that they have, you know, the opportunities to have a legal marriage in the United States. And that means a huge deal. I think, nowadays you see the LGBTQ, community. I mean, we've made huge strides in that area, where this is not something that had existed just 10 years ago. This is a community that's been marginalized for millennia, but now we live in a country where we're able to say yes. They're being recognized. What's very scary is right now with the Supreme Court repealing back all of these types of laws that were enacted back in the 60s and then into the 70s. And now we're kind of in 2023 seeing a whole bench that's just uber right and conservative, where they're just kind of peeling back all of the progress that we've made, which is a little scary. And I mean, not to become political, but again, when it comes to relationships, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
That's another layer of toxicity, I think, that's happening in our just country. The tenor in terms of, those types of relationships. Obviously, the tenor in terms of the relationships between, what is marriage, or what is, what defines people when you are, sharing your vows or exchanging vows and that type of stuff. But I mean, we know that toxic relationships is not just about marriage. I mean, we know that it can involve family, it can involve siblings, it can involve friends. And I guess just like kind of a takeaway from our segment, because I think we're going to end this pretty soon, is the fact that number one, we want to set appropriate boundaries.
Absolutely.
In order for us to maintain wellness and just protecting kind of our well-being, is to set appropriate boundaries with people. And number two is communicate, those boundaries.
That goes right into like recognizing what really bothers you, like, or is your, I hate to say this term, but what are your triggers are, and quote unquote, and then recognizing them and taking action with those triggers. Exactly. The right kind of action, not the wrong kind of action.
Correct. And then the third would be just to basically recognize and reciprocate those wishes. I think that's the hardest part, is that, a lot of people can maybe recognize those types of boundaries, communicate them, but then it's actually putting it and applying it into and putting it into action. And that's hard. It's hard for people.
Hard.
Some people have a hard time, dropping them out of social media. I mean, you and I both know, I mean, I'm not on Facebook, but people get really offended when you start defriending people, or like it becomes just this weird situation when you start defriending people, or you stop calling them, you start taking them out of you start blocking them in your phone. You suspend all sorts of contact. But again, that goes with the communication, right? So if you've already communicated, first of all, establish boundaries, communicated those boundaries, and then also try to reciprocate those things, then it should be kind of a clean break, right?
You would think. And there's also ghosting, which is not necessarily a clean break. That's just like you just avoiding the person. That's avoiding you, not even trying to take action into your situation. You're just avoiding doing something about it, which never really works.
Exactly.
You need to establish boundaries right away. You can't just, like, if I had a problem with Sunmi, I wouldn't just ignore her for like eons. I would take care of it right then and there. I would just talk to her, or just, she's a reasonable person. I would just be like, look, Sunmi, this really happened. I really want to talk about it with you, and let's nip it in the bud. That's a healthy way of taking care of it.
And then they're like avoidant people. So those types of personalities are people who are avoidant and they don't like to have confrontation. So, you're going to find a lot of those types of people. So whether people are ghosting each other, or, following the 3 steps, to be able to deal with, or avoiding a toxicity in your life or toxic relationships, that's what you have to do, but, when it's all said and done, it's easier said than done. I mean, we are talking about this today as if like, we have like myriads of experiences and we're like pros at doing this. Oh, absolutely not. I can tell you right now, there are situations happening even in my own life where I have to establish clear boundaries with various people. And be able to
Me
communicate those
too. I'm
boundaries.
just as bad. So,
And so it's an ongoing process, and it's happening
it
with
is.
friends, it's happening with families. I've
Yeah.
already kind of shut out, or actually like not deleted, but kind of let go. I would say, what does Gwyneth Paltrow say? She says conscious decoupling. So it's those types of things where you recognize it's time to move on, and it's time to decouple or disengage or depart from toxic
Mhm.
relationships. So I think that covers our episode today. What do you think? I mean, do you think this is pretty applicable for our listeners to be able to
I
apply?
think anybody who's taking from this podcast could definitely see that toxicity is definitely an issue in every relationship, and establishing proper boundaries is imperative to make sure your relationship could last a very long time with the person or
Agreed.
people that you're talking about.
Absolutely. That's penultimately probably one of the top things that we have to do. And it's a matter of self-preservation too, is to definitely set appropriate boundaries. And that's a way to ensure that you don't head into that, toxic relationship or into
Right.
the zone of toxicity with people. So
Right.
I think
Learn
that,
to let people go, people. Learn to let it go.
yeah, let it
Whoever
go.
it is, they will come back to you if they're that important to you. They will come
Exactly.
back.
It's like that song from Frozen, right? Let it go.
Exactly.
So just let it go,
Exactly.
as Elsa sings it, I think. But
She does.
anyhow,
She does.
we want to thank you so much for joining us for this hour of Red Velvet. This is our episode on toxicity, and I'm sure there will be many more episodes that deal with how we can move forward into making sure that we are maintaining positive relationships with people and maintaining just physical and mental wellness in our own lives and creating a healthy space for all of us. So thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, we're going to sign off. So
Let it
Alan,
go, people. Let it go.
let it go. All right. Take care, everybody. Until next time. Peace.
Bye.